If the New Orleans Saints decide they want a quarterback, but not at number 9 overall, trading back into the first round might be the way to go. And that's where Jaxson Dart could make a lot of sense. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as the Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net and Saints analyst with WWL TV. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're taking a look at the possibility of the New Orleans Saints trading back into the first round to select a quarterback. We'll take a look at what that would mean for the rest of the draft, what it would take for the Saints to do that, and the prospect that makes the most sense, Jaxson Dart, at the bottom of the first round. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Nissan Armada Player of the Week later in today's show. If the New Orleans Saints want to draft a quarterback, but don't necessarily want to invest the number 9 overall selection at the position in this year's draft, trading back into the first round is not only possible, but might be the best way to go for the New Orleans Saints to get this done. This is a possibility that I've been looking into for quite a few weeks now because we're getting closer to the Locked On NFL mock draft, and I kind of wanted to explore this as a possibility. Whether I do it or not, we'll see, but I wanted to explore it as a possibility, and I thought maybe this would be a good topic for the show as well, as I've taken a look at this to see what all of it would look like. And I do think trading back into the first round, so using the number 9 overall selection at defense, edge rusher, offensive line, pass catcher, whatever, right? Whatever's there, whatever makes sense. And then using that 40th overall pick as a piece to get back into the first round for a second selection in the first round to draft the quarterback makes a lot of sense. And the guy that makes the most sense at that spot, number 32 overall, 29 overall, whatever, feels like Jaxson Dart, in my opinion. Look, maybe some people really, really like Jalen Milroe. I actually do. I think Jalen Milroe, if he lands in the right system with the right coach, the right pieces around him, can be an explosive and dynamic playmaker at the NFL level. I just don't think that the Saints are that system, right? I think that guys like Tyler Shough get a lot of hype right now, the Louisville quarterback, but it reminds me of when guys like Davis Mills were getting a lot of late first round hype. Desmond Ridder was getting a lot of late first round hype, and those guys didn't go in the first round. Matt Corral out of Ole Miss was also that guy as well. Jaxson Dart could be that guy too, for all we know. But with 4,279 passing yards, 29 passing touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions in 2024, along with what feels like sky-high potential and a 69.3 completion percentage last year, it feels like, oh, and by the way, Kellen Moore went to personally go and view his pro day, which at Ole Miss and Oxford, which he did not do today, by the way, when it came to Shedeur Sanders' pro day over in Colorado. Now that could be smokescreen, right? They sent Scott Tolzien, the quarterback coach. They sent Keith Williams as well, the wide receiver coach, which tips a little bit about how they view Travis Hunter. They might view him as a wide receiver as opposed to a cornerback. But there's also other corners and things like that that could potentially be of interest, wide receivers that could be of interest to the New Orleans Saints in that participating in that pro day as well. But for New Orleans, it is interesting that Kellen Moore is not there. But for the purposes of our conversation, looking at a late first round quarterback, Shedeur Sanders isn't expected to make it past the Steelers if he does fall. If he does fall all the way to the bottom of the first round, then maybe this applies to him too. But I think Jaxson Dart is really the realistic option at this point. So why would you do this? Why would you say, hey, that quarterback might be there at 40. Why trade up with the Philadelphia Eagles to 32 or another team in the late 20s to go and get him when you could potentially land him at pick 40? Well, the first thing to consider too is that you've also got the New York Giants You've also got the Las Vegas Raiders, who just extended Geno Smith, by the way, so it gives you a little bit of an indication of where they want to continue to go, but doesn't completely rule them out from this rookie draft class. And you've also still got the New York Jets that all come up on the board before you in the second round. So you'd probably like to get ahead of those other QB needy teams in order to get up and get the guy that you want if this player, Jaxson Dart, is who Kellen Moore and the New Orleans Saints actually want, or whoever that quarterback is that you're targeting with a trade up at the bottom of the first round. I'm just going to keep using Jaxson Dart as the example because he feels like the player that makes the most sense to me. But you can replace that with whatever quarterback you like. It's all the same, right? Take who you like. For New Orleans, I think you want to get ahead of those second swings from those New York teams, from Cleveland, from the Las Vegas Raiders. You want to get past that, or you want to get ahead of that. And so I think that trade up helps you do that. The other thing is that it's, who knows? A team like the Pittsburgh Steelers could look to jump up in the second round. A team like the Pittsburgh Steelers could look to move back in the first round and then end up moving ahead of you effectively in a second swing. And so you want to get ahead of all those things. And so that's one reason. The second reason is for the fifth-year option. The fifth-year option is a mechanism that allows teams to be able to extend effectively a rookie contract for a first-round drafted rookie for, instead of a 4-year contract, to a 5th year in that contract. And that 5th year is based on averages of top however many quarterbacks that are being paid at the time of that extension being picked up or that option being picked up. The Saints right now are staring down the barrel of 2 of those decisions. Trevor Penning on the offensive line as well as wide receiver Chris Olave. They'll have to make those decisions before May 1st. Once they make those decisions, you could potentially see a 5th-year option for Chris Olave, for instance, picked up for about $15.5 million, which might be cheaper than what an extension might cost you in that specific year. Then you can work on an extension after that, restructure the 5th-year option, push that money back into the future, and then and then negotiate an extension beyond that to absorb some of that stuff that you've pushed down the road. So lots of different ways for New Orleans to go there. You love to do this with the quarterback too, because it gives you a little bit more cost control when it comes to the quarterback position. You want to extend that cost control as much as possible, because as much as that time that you can have that player under what is effectively a rookie contract before you're having to negotiate $50 million, extensions and things like that, because the player is simply a quarterback, you want to be able to spend money elsewhere. You want to be able to build through free agency. You want to be able to sign veterans. You want to go and spend money on the open market. The Saints haven't been in position to do that, because if they had $100+ million funneled into the quarterback position, and so when you have that starting quarterback on a rookie contract, which could still be Spencer Rattler, could still be Jake Haener, could be Jaxson Dart if he's drafted, that gives you a little bit more freedom, or really a lot more freedom, at a bunch of different positions for you to be able to go out there and spend on the open market. The New Orleans Saints flip their coaching staff this offseason. I expect that they'll do a lot of work flipping their roster in 2026 and 2027. Having a quarterback on a rookie deal gives you a lot of wiggle room to be able to do that, especially when you're nearing a $300 million salary cap by the time you get to 2027, which is right when the Saints would be out from under the Derek Carr dead cap if they move on from him before next season. And so that works really, really well for New Orleans. And so we could see that being an option for them. Trade into the first round or back into the first round after making the selection at number 9. You're not moving that pick. We're not talking about trading back for number 9. We're talking about making a selection at number 9 and then trading up from 40 back into the bottom of the first round. Get that quarterback, extend the lifespan of that rookie contract, and then now that you've rebuilt your coaching staff, let that coaching staff fully rebuild its roster because you have that quarterback under a rookie contract. That is assuming that quarterback works out and becomes your starter. So how would the New Orleans Saints do that? What would a trade package look like? And why is Jaxson Dart exactly the right option for the Saints at this position? We feel like we'll dive into that as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Nissan Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we'll be taking a look at different draft prospects and selecting one that stands apart. In this week's Armada Player of the Week is, of course, Jaxson Dart, the quarterback from Ole Miss. We're talking about the Saints potentially trading back into the first round of draft, and you know he had to be our Player of the Week this week. Plays a heavy-duty style of ball at 6'2", 223 pounds. Not the most mobile guy, but can move and take some hits. Completed 69.3% of his passes last year, 4,279 passing yards with only 6 interceptions to 29 touchdowns. He's a dream big, go forth and conquer kind of guy. And our friends over at Nissan always say, go forth and conquer. That's what the New Orleans Saints feel they might be able to do with Jaxson Dart potentially. It's clear that our player of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, which is exactly what you can do with the Nissan Armada and their other outstanding vehicles. So take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go and find your next big adventure. Shop now at nissanusa.com. All right, family, we're exploring the potential and hypothetical scenario in which the New Orleans Saints could potentially look to trade up to the bottom of the first round after making a selection at number 9 to draft a quarterback. And like we've said before, like I'm using Jaxson Dart as the player that feels most realistic to be available at that area, but it could be a Shedeur Sanders that falls or any other quarterback that maybe the team might like better than maybe the consensus is and all these other things. All it takes is Kellen Moore liking this quarterback, right? Like that's really all that this takes. Kellen Moore liking the quarterback, Jeff Ireland liking the quarterback. And we've heard Jeff Ireland before say that like he likes these guys. They're able to kind of move around and all these other things. And, you know, likes the mobile guys. Like it almost sounded like to a T when we were talking to him a couple years ago at the Senior Bowl that he was describing Jaden Daniels before Jaden Daniels even came out in the draft. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't the quintessential pocket passer that Jeff Ireland was high on. It was the guy that could move around and operate out of structure and play a little bit of that playground brand ball. Maybe not necessarily somebody that could sprint for 70 yards like a Lamar Jackson and, you know, do-si-do and spin and do all these incredible things that a Lamar Jackson does, but a player that's like I guess I'll say it, a guy that's like a Jalen Hurts, right? And I think that there's a lot of people that want to compare Jaxson Dart and Jalen Hurts. If you're an everydayer, you know. I am not the biggest advocate for pro comparisons. I think players should be compared to themselves. I don't know if that makes sense, but like they should be leveraged against themselves. But I get the idea of like trying to fill them in an archetype, right? Fit them into an archetype and all those other things. However, on top of all that, regardless of all that, rather, the Saints have a real opportunity here. If they like a guy in this year's quarterback class, to just take the guy in this year's quarterback class, continue taking swings at the position, just not do it in an irresponsible way. And so New Orleans moving up for Jaxson Dart at the bottom of the first round might sound irresponsible, but let's take a look at the history of it, right? I mentioned Lamar Jackson earlier. The Baltimore Ravens snagged Lamar Jackson by doing this exact thing. They traded up from number 52. Remember, the New Orleans Saints have number 40 in this year's draft. They traded up from number 52 to 32 with the Philadelphia Eagles, who currently hold the number 32 overall selection as well in this year's draft, to be able to go up and get Lamar Jackson. That was after they actually traded back from their original selection in the first round, didn't take Lamar Jackson the first time around because they traded out, didn't take him the second time around because they took Hayden Hurst in the first round, the tight end, and then traded back into the first round in order to draft Lamar Jackson. So let's play with a similar scenario. Let's say the New Orleans Saints spend number 9 on your favorite draft prospect. I don't care who it is. Mason Graham, Tedero McMillan, Tyler Warren, Jahdae Barron, James Pierce Jr. Love all of them. Will Campbell, love all of them, right? Any of them. Spend that first round pick there. Just don't go for the project edge rusher, please, at number 9. And then number 32 comes up on the board. Jaxson Dart still available, or insert your favorite quarterback in this scenario is still available at number 32. The New Orleans Saints could move. Let's take a look at what the Baltimore Ravens spent to do that. So they sent number 52, a 4th round pick, which was number 125. Okay, so 52 and 125, and then a 2nd round pick from the next year to the Philadelphia Eagles in order to get up to number 32, and they also picked up 132 in the 4th round as well. So the easy way to say this is a 2nd round pick for this year, a 2nd round pick for next year, and then a pick swap of just seven selection spots in the 4th round. That's what it took. A pick swap in the 4th, a 2nd round pick, and a 2nd round pick for next year. So if the New Orleans Saints were to replicate that same model, they could give the Philadelphia Eagles a better selection than what the Baltimore Ravens gave them back in 2018, not 52, but 40, 12 spots better, right? So then the Eagles only have to move back 8 spots in this situation. So you send 40, and then you do a third round pick swap. You can give them 131 for 134, but Ross, that's only a 3-pick move. But remember, you're asking them not to move back. You're not asking them to move back 20 spots out of the first round like the Baltimore Ravens did. You're asking them to move back 8 spots like the Baltimore Ravens did. They could still get the guy they wanted at 32 at pick 40. And remember, the Saints could still get Jaxson Dart at 40 potentially too, but this gives you the 5th-year option. So you send them 40, you send them 131, and you send them a 2nd-round pick for next year. You could potentially maybe try to finagle that a little bit, negotiate that a little bit, get a 3rd-round pick for next year moved, but let's just stick with what the model is from the Baltimore Ravens. 40, 131, and a 2nd-round pick for next year in exchange for a pick swap in the 4th round. So you go from 131 to 134, and then you get that number 32 overall selection. Are you willing to do that? A 2nd this year, a 2nd next year, and 131 for a 1st-round pick this year and a 4th-round pick this year, moving back 3 spots in the 4th round. I would take that in a heartbeat. In fact, I'll go a step further. The Philadelphia Eagles might say, you know what, the 131 to 134, it's not enough of an improvement. Fine, take 131 and give me one of your 160s that you have. Like the Philadelphia Eagles have 3 selections in the 5th round this year. The New Orleans Saints have no selections in the 5th round this year. So moving back from one of your 4th-round picks into the 5th round, not the worst way to go. You've heard me on this show several times already say that pick 131 is always the pick that I struggle with because the value doesn't feel like it's there anymore. So move back where the value will be there at the end of the 5th round, where you can grab another one of those developmental wide receivers, developmental pass rushers, or somebody that ends up still being there on the defensive interior or on the offensive interior, right? Still a great opportunity to be able to continue to build your roster that way. So would you do that? Pick 40, a 2nd-round pick next year, and 131 in exchange for pick 32 and 134. Or pick 2 and 161 or 164. A couple of the picks or heck, if you can get 2 of those 5th-round picks in exchange for that 4th-round pick or something, right? Like there's a bunch of different ways to work this out. Just to be clear, I would do that in a heartbeat. Because at pick 9, I can still draft my immediate impact player, my Teteroa McMillan, my James Pierce Jr., these guys that are 10 touchdown, 10 sack, 7 interception potential in the league. I can draft that guy at number 9. And then if I'm Kellen Moore and I have a quarterback that I really like, that's still on the board at 32, and all I got to do is shift some picks around and be okay with not having a 2nd-round pick next year, done. Sign me up, signed, sealed, delivered. I'm yours. Now, would you like to not make that trade with the Philadelphia Eagles? Probably. I get it. I get that. I understand that. I'm not oblivious here. So maybe you don't want to make that trade with the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe you want to make that trade with the Detroit Lions. Maybe you want to make that trade with the Kansas City Chiefs at 31 instead of 32. Sure. Whatever floats your boat. But this to me feels like the value is absolutely there. Right? You're talking about a 2nd-round pick and a 2nd-round pick and a 4th-round pick to get a potential long-term quarterback that you clearly feel, like if you're making this move, you clearly feel that quarterback, whoever it is, at 31, 32, 29, 28, whoever it is, you feel good about if you're the team, right? You're moving up if you're doing that. And you clearly feel good about them. That's what you're getting for advancing a 2nd-round pick, surrendering a 2nd-round pick next year, and taking a little bit of a step back in the middle rounds this year. To me, that's worth it. To me, that's very, very much worth it. So I could see the Saints going that route. It doesn't feel like it's that big of an asking price, thanks to the positioning of that number 40 overall selection being so close to the bottom of that 1st round. And the depth of player in this draft in terms of starter potential, the Eagles can get exactly who they want, or whoever's trading back can get exactly who they want, what they want, still at 40. I think the Saints can absolutely sell that, and I honestly think it's a good move. Let me know what you think. Coming up next, what would the rest of the draft look like if the New Orleans Saints did that? Well, let's do an impromptu mock draft. Why don't we? We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints could potentially move up for that quarterback and still have the opportunity to have a fantastic draft class in this year's NFL draft. Let me show you how. So let's say the New Orleans Saints were to select one of those big-bodied pass catchers, a Shedeur McMillan at number 9, or a Tyler Warren at number 9, even an offensive lineman at number 9. Fill in whoever you want there. And then getting to the trade up when it comes to the number 32 overall selection, getting that quarterback, whoever that quarterback might be. We're using Jaxson Dart in this scenario. Let's take a look at what the rest of the draft could potentially look like. Round 3, pick 71 rolls back around. And by the way, we're going to take a look at 2 different scenarios here. One in which the Saints move back just from 131 to 134 using the Philadelphia Eagles and using that sort of Baltimore Ravens model from a couple years ago. But let's say that the Eagles say something like, hey, 134 to 131 is not enough, but 161 to 131, swapping a 4th and a 5th round pick, that'll get us thinking. Then you might say yes to that. So we'll look at both of those selections. But let's keep moving here with round 3, pick 71. Number 9, you got that number 1 big contributor, immediate impact player. 32, you got the quarterback. Now at pick 71, this is still familiar to you. Running back Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee, LSU tight end Mason Taylor, Ole Miss linebacker Chris Paul Jr., Texas A&M defensive tackle Shamar Turner, not Shamar Stewart, the developmental edge rusher, but the defensive tackle in Shamar Turner, who has already visited with the Saints as well, or has had a planned to visit with the Saints. All of these players make a lot of sense and could be immediate impact. Maybe Mason Taylor's ruled out. If you invested in Tyler Warren, then okay, you go with the Dylan Sampson. But maybe you got you've been leaning heavy on offense, you want to go defense, then a Chris Paul Jr. or a Shamar Turner makes sense there. For our purposes, we'll say Tyler Warren in the first at number 9. We'll say, not Tyler Warren, sorry. We'll say James Pierce Jr. at number 9, just for fun, right? Something new. We'll go with Jaxson Dart at number 32. And then let's go back to the offense here again. And let's say Dylan Sampson at number 3, or Mason Taylor at round 3. Then we roll back around for the second selection in round 3. Again, pick 93. Good selections here. DJ Giddens, the running back out of Kansas State. Wyatt Milam, the offensive lineman coming out of West Virginia. Tate Radledge of Georgia on the offensive line. Charles Grant out of William & Mary on the offensive line. Charles Grant, Tate Radledge, they've spent some time with the Saints. I believe Tate Radledge has. I know Charles Grant has. One of those guys helps to build up your trenches. Take that selection. Round 4, pick 112. Lots of great options here. Oluwafemi Oladejo. So if we didn't go James Pierce Jr. and we went Tyler Warren in the first round, then bang, maybe an Oluwafemi Oladejo makes sense at the end of the 4th. Jacob Parrish, we haven't taken a corner yet, could do that. Take the corner out of Kansas State, or maybe you like the corner Kobe Bryant out of Kansas better. He's there too. Jamari Caldwell, round 4, that's in his range too. So you're in a pretty good position there. Let's say that we'll take Oluwafemi Oladejo. Oh no, so let's say Kobe Bryant or Jacob Parrish, one of the 2 corners, right? Continue to build that up. Now let's go to round 3, pick 134. So this is if you just move back a few selections. Mitchell Evans, the tight end out of Tennessee. Riley Mills, the interior defensive lineman out of Notre Dame, who's my pick in this scenario. Savion Jones, the edge rusher out of LSU. If we go with James Pierce Jr. in the first, we don't need Savion Jones, so I'm going to go with Riley Mills there. But if you took a pass catcher in the first round, Savion Jones makes a lot of sense there. But let's say that, again, Philly says, you know what? Not a big fan of moving up just 3 picks in the 4th round. Let's do a bigger pick swap in the 5th to the 4th. So then you get 161 in exchange for your 131. Look at all the players here. Isaac Tesla, the wide receiver out of Arkansas, 6'3", 200 plus pounds, big bodied wide receiver. If you didn't get that in the first round, here you go in the 5th. Jackson Hawes, the tight end out of Georgia Tech, athletic, smooth, all these other things. These are players we never get to talk about because the Saints don't have a selection in this round. Nick Nash out of San Jose State University, big-bodied guy with some really, really good athleticism. Thomas Fedone out of Nebraska, the Cornhuskers tight end who had a private visit with the New Orleans Saints, top 30 visit. If you didn't take a tight end yet, could be a selection for you. How about Tyler Cooper, the Minnesota Golden Gophers interior offensive lineman, a guy that we loved in the 3rd and 4th rounds, but doesn't have the value there necessarily, but could make sense in the 5th round. Ja Joyner, the big-bodied edge rusher out of Minnesota, spent time at the Senior Bowl. You know the New Orleans Saints love their Senior Bowl edge rushers. How about you take one in the 5th round instead of taking one in the 1st round? Great opportunity there for the New Orleans Saints too. So out of those, I might say Isaac Tesla, being the wide receiver coming out of Arkansas, maybe makes the most sense. So let's revisit what those 2 drafts look like. You go Tennessee edge rusher, James Pierce Jr. at number 9 overall. You make the trade to move up 2 first-round picks and then a late-round pick swap, or a mid-round pick swap, rather, to get up to 32 from 40. You take Jaxson Dart, the quarterback out of Ole Miss. Then you roll around round 3, Dylan Sampson. Round 3, Tate Ratledge. Round 4, Jacob Parrish or Kobe Bryant, one of those tight ends. And then in round 5, you could take Isaac Tesla, the wide receiver out of Arkansas, or you stay in round 4, you take Riley Mills, the defensive tackle out of Notre Dame. Pretty solid situation for New Orleans to be in there. I think this could work for New Orleans without being something that ends up creating an issue for them to where they give up too much capital to be able to help to build their team. This is a far, far more, let's call it, fiscally responsible way when it comes to draft capital being your currency to move up, get your quarterback that you like. If you're moving up for a quarterback at the end of the first round, you like that quarterback, right? Like that answers the question of whether or not that's the right quarterback for New Orleans. They would like him in order to be able to make that move. They would have to like him in order to be convinced to go up and make that move. So if the Saints were to do that, you get that quarterback without wholesaling your future away to build around that quarterback. And not only do you maintain the draft capital, sans 1 second-round pick next year, you can live with that. But not only do you do that, but you also open up your opportunity to where if this quarterback pans out, which is still an if you have to solve if you're the New Orleans Saints, but if that quarterback is the right quarterback, you also end up then potentially having a starting quarterback on a rookie contract. At the very least, you potentially create competition between 2 of your quarterbacks that are on rookie contracts, and one of those quarterbacks becomes your starting quarterback moving forward. It doesn't necessarily have to be the guy that you traded up for. You'd like for it to be because it's this coaching staff's pick, you leverage future capital in order to be able to go up and get them. You gave that first round investment to them, all those other pieces. Don't get me wrong. You want it to be the guy, if you're this coaching staff, you want it to be the guy that you drafted if you're this coaching staff. And so that would be the idea. But at worst, you create the competition that allows one of your quarterbacks on a rookie contract to be able to move up and become your guy moving forward, which gives you spending flexibility, gives you salary cap flexibility, and you didn't leverage your entire future of first-round picks away in order to do it. You have a first-round pick opportunity, you have draft pick opportunities to keep your team young, and you have money in the future to be able to go and spend to keep your team experienced, productive, and competitive. It's not the worst way for the New Orleans Saints to go. In fact, I think it's far from. In fact, if the Saints did something like this, and they came away with a haul that still works for them, pretty good situation for them. Maybe one of the better scenarios for them in this year's draft. So wouldn't be surprised to see the Saints go this way. Wouldn't be surprised to see them not go this way either. But as an option that's out there, it's not an unrealistically abhorrent one to undergo. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. We'll continue on 7 days a week here on Locked On Saints. In tomorrow's episode, what about the New Orleans Saints trading back? The last time they did it was when they had a new coach in the building. They have a new coach in the building. Could they do it, and what would it look like? We'll break all of that down in tomorrow's episode. Appreciate you very much for making this a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jaxson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.